ನಾದಮೂರ್ತಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಪಾದ ಮೋದದಿಂದ ಭಜಿಸುವೆ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡು ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡು ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ನಾದಮೂರ್ತಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಪಾದ ನಾದಮೂರ್ತಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಪಾದ ಮೋದದಿಂದ ಭಜಿಸುವೆ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡೋ ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ಸದಾ ಭಕ್ತಿ ರಸವೆಂಬೋ ಮುತ್ತು ಮಾಣಿಕ್ಯದ ಹರಿವಾಣದಿ ಮುಕ್ತನಾಗಬೇಕು ಎಂದು ಮುಕ್ತನಾಗಬೇಕು ಎಂದು ಮುತ್ತಿನ ರತಿ ಎತ್ತುವೆ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡು ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ಸದಾ ನಿನ್ನ ನಾನು ಬಿಡುವನಲ್ಲ ಎನ್ನ ನೀನು ಬಿಡಲು ಸಲ್ಲ ನನ್ನ ನಾನು ಬಿಡುವನಲ್ಲ ಎನ್ನ ನೀನು ಬಿಡಲು ಸಲ್ಲ ಘನ ಮಹಿಮ ವಿಜಯ ವಿಠಲ ಘನ ಮಹಿಮ ವಿಜಯ ವಿಠಲ 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 ನಿನ್ನ ನಾನು ಬಿಡುವನಲ್ಲ ಎನ್ನ ನೀನು ಬಿಡಲು ಸಲ್ಲ ಘನ ಮಹಿಮ ವಿಜಯ ವಿಠಲ ನಿನ್ನ ಭಕುತನ ಕೇಳೋ ಸೊಲ್ಲ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡು ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡೋ ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ನಾದಮೂರ್ತಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಪಾದ ನಾದಮೂರ್ತಿ ನಿನ್ನ ಪಾದ ಮೋದದಿಂದ ಭಜಿಸುವೆ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸದಾ ಎನ್ನ ಹೃದಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡು ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡು ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ವಾಸ ಮಾಡು ಶ್ರೀಹರಿ ಸದಾ ಸದಾ ಸದಾ
Ma'am, now His Excellency Governor of Karnataka will present a bouquet to Ms. Sangeeta Katti. I now request Ms. Priya of Global to hand over the bouquets to His Excellency Governor of Karnataka. To Excellency Governor of Sikkim. To His Lordship Justice M.N. Venkatachalaya. Professor M.V. Nadkarni, and Professor V.S. Ramamurthy. Thank you, Ms. Priya. Distinguished writers, thinkers, speakers on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. We are both proud and privileged to host this function to release a box set of Bahudha and the post 9/11 world and India's culture, the state, the arts and beyond by His Excellency Shri B.P.Singh, Governor of Sikkim. We now request Professor V.S. Ramamurthy, Director of National Institute of Advanced Studies, for giving the welcome address.
His Excellency Governor of Karnataka, Shri Bhardwaj Ji, His Excellency Governor of Sikkim, Shri B.P.Singh Ji, Honorable Justice Shri Venkatachalaya Ji, Professor Natkarni, distinguished invitees. Good evening to all of you. On behalf of the Oxford University Press and the National Institute of Advanced Studies, it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this release function of a box set of two books, Bahudha and the Post 9/11 World, and India's Culture, the State, the Arts and Beyond by Sri B.P. Singh. Civilizations that have evolved and thrived over thousands of years also have well-developed cultures. India is no exception. The Indian culture, its arts, music, languages, traditions are all well known and have survived repeated natural disasters, external invasions and the colonial rule. 20th century brought in revolutionary changes in the way in which we live. Today, there is no aspect of human life that has been left untouched by technology in some way or another. The revolutionary changes in the transport and communication technologies have changed the world into a global village. What is the relevance of culture in a fast-changing, technology-dominated world? The author, Sri B.P. Singh, brings in a multi-dimensional perspective to culture. You see the state, you see the terrorism, 9/11, all aspects of today's world, and what is the intricate relation between culture and the specialities of today. We all look forward to the release of these books by our chief guest, His Excellency Shri Bhardwaj Ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We now request His Excellency Governor of Karnataka to release the box set.
Your Excellency, Shri H.R.Bhardwaj, Your Excellency, Shri B.P. Singh, Professor Ramamurthy, Professor Natkarni, esteemed Justice Malimat, Justice Gurrajan, the Chief Secretary, Mr. Ramdas Pai, Mrs. Pai, Mr. Ranjan, very distinguished and respected invitees. I find an intimidating audience here. Ladies and gentlemen, had the privilege of meeting the present governor of Sikkim when he was a bureaucrat and an administrator. My interactions indicated, I always suspected that beyond his role as a bureaucrat, he was a scholar and a patriot and a passionate thinker. There are many ideas underneath our subconscious mind. Our professions don't allow them to grow. There's some kind of a passion that unleashes them. And when I found these two books, I went through them with respect and interest. And they are painful reflections of the way in which humanity has conducted itself. 20th century has been the bloodiest century in human history. They say the modern mind is the product of the 17th century science, which brought in its sweep of scientific revelations a kind of ethic neutrality of science. And 19th century became the most confused century. The 20th, the bloodiest century. We have killed 220 million people in wars, in civil strife, in commotions, not unrelated to ethnicity, to religion, language, and a whole host of things that divide man from man. Bahudha, this beautiful book, discusses the way in which humanity has held itself accountable, on account of the way in which we have handled our affairs. There are solutions. In fact, the European Union is a beautiful, shining example of how we can mismanage our affairs better. And Niall Ferguson speaks about 1,000 wars that Europe fought between its components in the 400 years. And how the beautiful work that the European Union did, they eliminated wars within. How was it possible? They set up some meaningless, utterly insignificant supranational institutions. They had the European Heritage Commission, the Human Rights Commission, various commissions, where leaders of public opinion from various states came, drank, enjoyed time. Slowly over time, whose extent was not predictable then, a miracle happened. When the two Germanys were united, a spectacular thing happened in Europe. The Deutsche Bank, the most professional bank, listed all the economic disasters that would come out of it. And they did. The economic adverse consequences were apparent. But Helmut Kohl said, I want a European roof over Germany, not a German roof over Europe. And when he was lost to Schroeder, I think sometime in September 98, and he announced his retirement, people shouted Helmut for half an hour in the ovation. And somebody said his retirement is something equivalent to the Alps announcing their departure. That's how they found solutions. Here in South Asia, I think people like our eminent governor, Shri Bhardwaj, a great scholar and a very passionate human being, passionate in his thinking of the welfare of mankind. And His Excellency B.P.Singh, the way in which he has expressed his views on matters, they must somehow find out a way in which we can scourge, relieve our posterity from the scourge of this communalism and strife in the subcontinent. And over time, we must be able to build a South Asian Federation and slowly pave the way for it. The priceless object of evolutionary heritage containing the blueprint of human destiny, somebody said, does not lie in the farthest reaches of our outer space or in the inky blackness of the deep sea. It lies rather inside our skull and is, of course, the human brain. What the record indicates historical documentation says, is that in the major disasters of our century, our history, individual aggressiveness for selfish motives played an almost negligible part compared to the unselfish loyalty and devotion to tribe, nation, religion, and a political ideology. Tribal wars, national wars, civil wars, religious wars, world wars are waged in the purported interests of the community, not of the individual, to decide issues that are far removed from the personal self-interest of the combatants. It would seem that the basic problem with man has been his extreme loyalty rather than aggressiveness. And it is the fanatical loyalty as a motive force that has led him to the point of self-sacrifice, to the king, to the country, to the leader, to the group. It is a curious fact that man, when alone, behaves in a different manner, seeking values which are higher than his immediate ambitions. Then when he's a group, he's a different person. The group loyalties with which he identifies himself take precedence over his individual expressions. The clues for this ambivalence in his nature are perhaps best provided in the peculiarity of the human brain to sustain the affect-based systems that are not compatible with the reasoning faculties. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a beautiful passage which comes from a very interesting source. The Vice President of the United States, Al Gore, after he wrote that book, The Inconvenient Truth, brought out a small book called Assault on Reason. He cites one of our expert neurologists in America. He says, when traumatic events, those involving anxiety or pain, are stored in memory, the process is different. All bets are off. The amygdala is a thumb-like structure in the human brain, which they say it's a mystic organ. The amygdala is activated, and that memory is coded and stored differently. In effect, the time tag is removed, so that when traumatic experiences are later recalled, they feel it as present. At the moment, even though the trauma being remembered was a long time ago, because the intensity of the memory causes part of the brain to react as if the trauma were happening right now. Moreover, recent analysis of the superficial nature of these structural similarities has very little influence over the fear center. There's a chapter called Politics of Fear, and how fear, the neurological foundations of fear, not the emotional foundations of fear. And they say this ability to conceive of something that activates the amygdala and starts the fear response is particularly significant because of another important and closely related phenomenon called the vicarious traumatization. If someone, such as a family member or an individual with whom we identify has experienced trauma, that person's feelings can be communicated to us even though we didn't directly experience that traumatic experience. Recent research proves that the telling of traumatic stories to those who feel linked by identity to the victims, this is the important thing, this is the ethnic. For example, whether the shared identity is ethnic, religious, historical, cultural, linguistic, tribal, or nationalistic, can actually produce emotional and physical responses in the listener similar to those experienced by the victims. Indeed, physiologists have recently discovered a new class of neurons called the mirror neurons that create a powerful physical capacity for empathy. Dr. Villayanur Ramchandran described the startling significance of this revelation. It has long been known that neurons in this region fire, that discharge electrical emission, when you poke the patient to cause pain. So they called pain-sensing neurons, on the assumption that they alert the organism to potential danger, leading to avoidance. But researchers in Toronto found that human patients some of these, just one second. I found that human patients, some of these cells respond not only when the patient himself was poked with the needle, as expected, but also fired equally when the patient watched another patient being poked. These neurons, mirror neurons, were dissolving the barrier between the self and the other, showing that our brains are actually wired up for empathy and compassion. Notice that one isn't being metaphorical in saying this. The neurons in question simply can't tell if you or the other person is being poked. It is as if the mirror neurons were doing a virtual reality simulation of what's going on in the other person's brain, thereby almost feeling the other person's pain. Therapists first discovered the powerful phenomenon of vicarious traumatization well before the discovery of the mirror neurons that explain how it works. Dr. McCann and Perlman offered the original definition of the vicarious traumatization as the enduring psychological consequence of therapists of exposure to the traumatic experience of the victim clients. Persons who work with victims may experience profound psychological effects that can disrupt and cause pain for themselves. And this phenomenon is the neurological foundation of fear of the minorities. And this experience is perhaps the foundation for, is not the kind of anxiety and fear that we cause. Minorities are the result of irreversible moments of history and of mankind. Short of genocide and mass transportation, they are here to stay. How beautiful we can make of this is the experience. I think the book, in a non-trivial sense, tells us how we as human beings can elevate ourselves on the very foundations of our own neural endowment. We have 100 billion neurons in our brains, they say. We use hardly 5% of them. I think a little more of intellectual inquiry into oneself, the way in which I suppose this is a decade where mysticism, philosophy, science will merge and find solutions for problems that confront humanity. Next decade will be the most stunning decade in human civilization. And a great philosopher 2,500 years ago said some memorable words. He said, extend the tender care for the tender ones in your family, for the tender ones in the families of others. You extend the gentle respect for the elders in your family, to those in others' families. By the extension of your compassion, you can roll a great society in the palm of your hands, and you can protect everyone within the 4 seas. But be careful that if you don't do that, you will not be able to protect your own wife and children. Thank you very much for this occasion. It's a beautiful book. I respectfully convey my congratulations to His Excellency Shri B.P.Singh for the beautiful work that he has done. He has indicated to us what kind of mess we have created for ourselves and what are the ways out of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I now request Professor M.V. Nadkarni to speak a few words.
His Excellency Shri Bhardwaj, Governor of Karnataka, His Excellency Shri B.P.Singh, Governor of Sikkim, and dignitaries present here and friends. I am greatly privileged and honored to be invited to speak during this August function involving two intellectual governors and amidst this very distinguished audience. Shri Singh has been writing on these two themes, Bahudha and Indian culture, for a long time, since more than 2 decades. And it is very good that he has put these thoughts together, and 2 books have been published by Oxford University Press, and in a very attractive get-up. Both books are very well researched with a lot of authentic references, clarificatory endnotes, and very lucidly written, so that though both the books are very scholarly, they are also accessible to a wider audience. In fact, the themes are not of interest only to academicians, but for a much wider audience, including policymakers and even common people. So I hope that the Oxford University Press will bring out paperback editions of this so that it is accessible to a lot more people. The 2 themes, Bahudha and India's culture, are organically related with each other. In fact, one can say the relations between the 2 is something like chicken and egg. Each is born out of the other, and each is the mother of other. In the sense that it is the Bahudha approach which serves as the foundation for Indian agriculture. And it is Indian agriculture which has made Bahudha approach possible. There is this mutual relationship. And it is this which has been brought out in both the books, that the mutual, though the books are separate, the significance of bringing them together in a box set is that they are both organically related. Shri Singh makes it very clear that this relevance of the Bahudha approach is not confined to Indian agriculture alone. Indian culture alone. In fact, it is relevant to wider audience, a wider world. In fact, one can say that Bahudha approach has been India's contribution to world civilization as important as the discovery of zero or development of zero, the concept of zero and the decimal number system. Now, what after all this is a Bahudha approach? And the importance of this has been stressed by the authors. The survival of world civilization itself depends on this. India's national progress and survival also will depend on adoption of a Bahudha approach to some extent. What exactly is this? As he has expertly explained, the inspiration for this word has been derived from the Rigvedic saying, Ekam Sadvipraha Bahudha Vadanti. The one truth has been explained by the wise in so many different ways. Now, there are many dimensions to truth, and it can be variously explained, has been known to Indian agriculture and Indian thinkers since long, since the time of Rigveda itself. And this has meant a considerable degree of tolerance for differences of views, differences of religion, differences of cultures, and even difference in dress and difference in food. And what the author makes very clear is that it's not a question of just tolerance for differences. One should have mutual respect also. And the difference between tolerance and respect should be evident if one were to tell his wife when she serves a good dish that he tolerates this food or her cooking, well, it may even lead to divorce. So there is a difference between mere tolerance and respect. Actually, it is respect which is necessary, not just mere tolerance when you deal with differences. Now, there are, of course, problems sometimes, even in this. For example, when you have to respect different religions, it means that there is no contemptuous, there is no denigration, there is no attempt at running down other religions, and there is no proselytization also. In fact, proselytization and this emphasis on converting people from one religion to another doesn't mean, it's not let alone respect, let alone tolerance. It means even contempt for other religions. And this is not very amicable, this doesn't create a very amicable environment. But even then, one has to have a respect for differences of opinions and respect the different approaches. Now, let me, to explain this Bahudha approach, I think I find it very interesting to quote one of the eminent Kannada poets' poem, Dara Bendre. In a poem addressed to flowers, Who? The poem, title of the poem is Who? It's addressed to flowers. Who is a flower? He says, Bendre says, Ondarolu ondilla, ondarolu kundilla, ondondu andavu tanatanage chanda. It is difficult to translate the beauty of this poem into English, but let me try at least a literal translation. Each is unique, each without blemish, and each beautiful in its own way or in its own right. I think this poem is a marvelous expression of the need for Bahudha approach. Bahudha approach is needed for its beauty, because in its, you respect Bahudha because it means diversity is beauty. We can't have only one type of a flower in the garden. A garden, it becomes beautiful when you have varieties of flowers, varieties of plants in that. Beauty is one of the rationale, justifications for this. Another rationale is that diversity and pluralism are creative. Art and civilization can thrive only on the basis of diversity, when diversity is permitted. No culture can advance if it sort of confines itself to a kind of ironclad a box where nothing, no differences of opinion are expressed. It's only in diversity and tolerance that art and civilization and there is creativity, all this will thrive only under this kind of a condition. In fact, it is diversity which is a mark of civilization. It is through respect for diversity that civilization can survive and thrive and avoid a clash. Now, the principle of diversity applies to ecological diversity also, or biodiversity also. It is not confined to social and political dimensions. The earth retains its ability to nourish us only because of its diversity. The necessity to maintain ecological diversity in good health arises out of this need for human survival. Man has to accommodate nature if nature has to accommodate man. This is a very important axiom which one has to remember. Now, there are of course questions. To what extent can we permit diversity? Can we, for example, there are ethical questions. Should we have for a nation or a group of a common ethical code for all citizens? Or should we allow each individual to have his own or her own ethical code? Where do you draw a balance between a uniformity in this and diversity, individualism and collective kind of interest? This is of course a very delicate task, and that is why India has been emphasizing the principle of unity in diversity. It is paradoxical, but it is true that any diversity in terms of religion, language, or culture, anything, it needs a unifying principle to make this diversity possible, to give it a meaning. Without a unifying principle, diversity itself will have no meaning. It will be a chaos. To convert diversity into a kind of a coherence, you need a unifying principles. It is unity which gives meaning and strength to diversity, and it is diversity which promotes and strengthens unity. It is this genius of India which combines unity with diversity which lies behind its survival. So we cannot stress unity alone, nor can we stress diversity alone. It has to be unity in diversity or unity and diversity. Now, however, coming to the other book, India's Culture, which is closely, as I said, is organically connected with this Bahudha approach. Shri Singh's seminal contribution consists in the fact that he says he views cultural power as only next in importance and significance to military strength and economic strength. Cultural power can be of tremendous significance to give it a status and so on. But cultural power is of a different kind compared to military power and economic power. Cultural power need not be of a dominating kind. It can be mutually enriching and mutually enhancing, mutually pleasant, and mutually it can spread to happiness. But at the same time, one cannot say that we cannot take for granted that cultural power will not be of a dominating kind. Sometimes cultural power can be dominating and it can lead to some kind of sometimes even odious forms. There is an interesting novel by S.L. Bhairappa in Kannada called Mandra. The story relates to a musician of a national reputation, a great musician, who attracts a lot of disciples, including female disciples. But he systematically exploits the female disciples, even sexually. And in the end, it is this musician who is diminished, who is isolated and forlorn at the end, but not the disciple. The disciple somehow finds a spiritual solace at the end, but the guru, who culturally sexually exploits the disciples using his cultural power, is totally diminished. That is, I think it means that domination, even in cultural sphere, can be a double-edged weapon. We should not use cultural power as an instrument of domination. And that is a care which I think every nation will have to take. It has to be strictly on equal grounds, not of inferior and superior relationship. Okay. The author has done well to stress that culture has to be reflected in everyday life. I'll take only a minute or two. And the culture has to be lived also. Unfortunately, we have in Indian culture, there are several problems. There are several shortcomings also in the way in which we live our culture. Like we find people having a lot of very bad habits, spitting on the roads, littering on the roads, and I don't want to list these. There are so many deficiencies in our Indian culture. And the problem is, this is also a part of Bahudha. I wonder, this is good coexisting with evil, ugliness coexisting with beauty. And this is something which we will have to overcome, resolve through maybe our spiritual strength. Thank you very much for giving this privilege.
Thank you, sir. I now request His Excellency Governor of Sikkim and the author of this books to share his experience and thoughts in bringing out this box set.
His Excellency, the Governor of Karnataka, Shri H.R.Bhardwaj ji, Justice Venkat Chalaiya ji, Professor Ram Murthy ji, Professor Nadkarni ji, and I see in the audience my batchmates. I also see my distinguished friend, Professor U.R. Ananthamurthy, Sri Ramdas Pai, Srimati Pai, and a number of others. And I'm really beholden to them for gracing this event. I have heard the two learned speakers, IQ. I must mention to you that I have always looked upon His Excellency the Governor of Karnataka, Shri H.R. Bhardwaj, as one of the persons belonging to the Indian National Congress who were in politics and who had carried culture with them. And I have always respected him as an elder. I have known Justice Venkat Chalaiya ji for quite long. I first came to know him when I was Union Home Secretary, and later it continued. I must tell you that three persons with whom whenever I went to call on, the meeting lasted for 1 hour to 1.5 hours. One was Sri P.N. Haksar. Most of you must have heard his name. The other was Sri B.P.Singh. And the third was Justice Venkat Chalaiya. I am putting them in the age group. But I must say that with Justice Venkat Chalaiya, I had the loveliest cup of coffee served in a silver glass. And the meeting lasted that long. I have known Professor Ram Murthy for long. Professor Nadkarni, of course, is the new find, and I am so happy to meet him. Friends, I also felt looking at the audience here, and I have come to Bangalore after a long time. I felt that this city, which is known for the city of science and technology, is also emerging as a city of knowledge and culture. And this audience is a testimony to that change, and may it continue to grow in strength, this character of the city. There is a saying in Sanskrit that Kavih karot kavyani rasang janati pandita. The poet writes poems, but it is the learned who find meaning in that. And when I was hearing Justice Venkat Chalaiya, I found new meanings. I found new meanings from Professor Nadkarni's discourse too. I must tell you, I don't want to go on the subject, why did I write these two books? India's culture I wrote because I was culture secretary and I was made to speak and inaugurate so many seminars. There is a system in the government of India which persists, and fortunately so, that somebody gives you a written text. And I was very busy as culture secretary organizing 50 years of India's independence. Professor Ananthamurthy knows that. And I found that my speech was horrible. And this was an international conference. So I was to reach the venue, and then I was nervous that I can't read this out. And under that pressure, a thought came to me that after the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1991, the world had changed in significant ways of ideology. Military, which was the most important denominator of the status of a country in the community of nations had yielded place to market. And I felt that culture is also emerging as the third factor. So it was market, military, and culture. And my speech became a great success. And I was thinking that can I develop it as a book? And I used to write late in the night. And ultimately, the book was written. And this became a success, both in India and abroad. There is a critique of one chapter on the class of civilizations theory of Huntington. Huntington used to be visiting India at that time. So through an Indian diplomat, he asked for an appointment. And we met first time. And he was unhappy that I had criticized him. I had never known that he will read the book, but he had read. Then when I became Union Home Secretary, he again came to me to find out whether I have changed my view that culture is that important. I said, no, I have, despite this job of holding the lathi, I am still convinced that cultural values are important. But I had not ever thought that these values will degenerate. Because we were taught by Mahatma Gandhi and the leaders of the early republic that don't hate the British, hate the colonial order which was exploitative, which was cruel, which was unjust. But this was not the teaching in other countries which got independence, or the countries which were liberated from the yoke of the Soviet Union. And they had different kinds of backgrounds. And so they used religion, they used culture. And we were very soon pushed into the era of terrorism, suicide squads. I was out. I thought that my book, India's Culture, would be all right for students in India, but it would have no meaning for my wider philosophy. It is true that culture emerged as the third important factor, and I was the first to make that forecast in writing, but not the way I had visualized. It was just the opposite. And then the flashpoint came in the morning of 11th September 2001, when aircraft flown by Al-Qaeda, overtaken and flown by Al-Qaeda, attacked World Trade Center at New York, Pentagon in Washington, and Pennsylvania Fields. I was then the executive director at the World Bank, and I thought when Pentagon was attacked that this is the end of the American supremacy, because Pentagon is supposed to be the safest place. 20 days later, there was a seminar on terrorism in the United States, in Washington, D.C. I was invited there. The chairperson was known to me. The speaker was from Chicago. And he said about pluralism, he said the need for the coalition of governments to tackle terrorism. And the chairperson, in summarizing, started praising India and India's history of pluralism. Different faiths have flourished here, and the Indian genius. And then she said, pointing out at me that he is so-and-so, executive director of the World Bank, who was earlier Home Secretary, may he take the floor. India may have the answer. So my first sentence in that meeting was, while India may have the answer, I do not. And then went on to narrate how we have tackled terrorism. But it did stick into my mind, what is India's answer? What could be India's answer? And it was in that connection that this Ekam Sad Viprah Bahudha Badanti came to my mind, because I could not have said truth and non-violence of Gandhiji. Now, Ekam Sad is at the root of the problem. Although the Rig Veda talks of Ekam Sad with primacy, but the root of the problem today is Ekam Sat. My truth is superior to your truth. My God is superior to your God. My scripture is better than your scripture. And so therefore I found that Bahudha is the answer. And went on trying to research, is Bahudha really true in Indian thought processes? And I found that from Mahavir, from the Vedic world to Mahavir, Buddha, and coming down to the common people. So I went round, interviewed people from 5 selected villages from different parts of India, and found that this is true. Now this Bahudha means 2 things. There is no word in English which can explain Bahudha. Pluralism is the closest. Because Bahudha is not only the celebration of diversity, it is celebration of diversity. It is also inculcation of an attitude of mind that while I have a point of view, I also have an attitude that you may perhaps be right. And anybody who has that mental training will not join a suicide squad, will not kill another person. And so I found that is at the crux of the problem, and that's why I have deviated from the theory of Ekam Sat. That's why I have said in this book Bahudha that, look, it is not good enough that you respect another person. You must know about his religion. You must know about his values, his beliefs. Then only you can change, or he can change if he knows about you. Now, both these books, the foreword has been written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So I had given to him this Bahudha book also, the second book. But while dealing with Bahudha, I came across a dilemma that what is the role of the military? Is military intervention necessary to create an environment where congenial atmosphere could be created? And I found that it is necessary. It took me several months. And I drew it from both Ashoka and Akbar. And there is a chapter in the book on Ashoka, Akbar and Nehru. And I said, you know, even after Ashoka became a pacifist, he never reduced the armed strength of the empire. There were proposals that the army could be given some other job, including agriculture. He turned it down. He kept it professional. And Akbar followed similar policy, although there is nothing to show that Akbar knew about Ashoka's policy. So my dilemma was what to tell to Dalai Lama, because he may not read this paragraph, or people may criticize him. So I sought an appointment and told him that I have advocated military intervention where necessary. So I hope this does not embarrass you. Otherwise, if you don't want to write the foreword, it's fine. He said, no, I have already written the foreword. It is fine with me. I write at page 347 of the book. I will just read this paragraph. A question is often posed about the role and relevance of the military in the construction of an environment for creative dialogue among civilizations. In the post-9/11 world, it is possible, in the post-9/11 world, it is quite obvious that the ugly face of terrorism has given full justification for a strong military posture. In fact, the rise of terrorist activities in different parts of the world demands it. It, however, does not mean that military intervention can be taken in an arbitrary fashion. It has to conform to international norms and has to have the sanction of the UN system. This is my stand. And this has been proved right. Military intervention alone cannot secure an enduring peace. That is obvious. It is fashionable these days to quote the Time magazine, so I thought. The Time magazine, in its lead article on Karzai, entitled On His Own, in its June 11, 2012 issue, declares, and I'm quoting the magazine, after 10 years and more than 533 billion US dollars, the world's most powerful military has not been able to subdue a ragtag militia, unquote. So what is the answer? And that's why I say that it is in the context of these imperatives that the Bahudha approach becomes relevant. But the moot question is, raised by Professor Nadkarni, how to propagate Bahudha. And I have devoted 3 chapters in this book to that. And that is education programming. And I am one of those who feel that although it was Nietzsche who had declared that the God is dead, it is not true. God is alive. And so there is a chapter on religious harmony. You can't do without God. That contrary to its basic principles. We denied education to women and to a large section of our society, indulged in pernicious acts of untouchability, discrimination, and worse. I know some of these still persist. Nonetheless, it is a great lesson of India's history that genuine pluralism and toleration are achievable and indeed have been historical facts. Indian democracy tells us that we must not turn away from openness and toleration of differences. You all know that several scholars in the West had said that India, with a hierarchy of castes divided by religions and speaking a host of languages, in 1947 can't become a democracy. In 1947, our population was mired in poverty and faced continual threat of starvation. Its literacy rate was as low as 16%, and yet democracy did take root in India and bloomed over the years. And today, democratic politics runs in the veins of the bloodstream of the Indian polity. Millions of people make themselves heard simultaneously, and thousands of competing claims are cleared on a daily basis. The 2009 election to the Lok Sabha had an electorate of 714 million, of whom over 420 million voted, which is more than the electorate of the United States and all the countries of the European Union put together. I have often thought about the secret of this successful democratic phenomenon. I have no hesitation in asserting that the Bahudha approach of tolerance and respect for other person's point of view have greatly contributed to the deepening of democracy in India. Our leaders in the freedom struggle, as well as of the new republic, played awesome role in harmonizing representative democracy with our cultural values. But I must tell you a side story. When this book Bahudha was launched in New York first, then it was a solitary book. I got a letter from Oxford University Press, president of OUP, New York, that he has a friend who wants to make Bahudha chocolates, because he had shared that book with him. whether I will charge some royalty or fee. So I said, no, if he is your friend, he is also my friend. I will not charge. I said, but there is a condition. On the day of the launch, Bahudha chocolates should be served. So Bahudha chocolates were served. Later I was surfing Google, some months later, and I found that one fellow renamed his restaurant as Bahudha Restaurant, and the other renamed it as Bahudha Bar. New York is known for its creative mind. I don't know what will be the reaction to this launch event in Bangalore on the population. But I was very happy that a Chicago-based organization dedicated to propagation of pluralism, when its founder read the review of this book in one of the newspapers, he renamed his mission statement and to call it Bahudha pluralism. I don't know what does it mean, but it means both. But I must tell you another side story. Oxford, Bahudha was not the word in English dictionary till this book was written. So Oxford University Press wanted me to change the title. I said, I won't change the title. So they went up to the principals. So when they saw me adamant, they reluctantly agreed. But they asked me 200 questions, one-line questions. And one was, who is the originator of Bahudha, Radha Krishnan or the author? I said, neither. So Bahudha is with you, and I hope that all of us together, and particularly the leaders and the diplomats, will propagate this Bahudha approach, because this is our civilizational response to the problem facing the world. And we must do that as a nation. We must do that as a civilized behavior, and this helps everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful talk. I now request His Excellency, Governor of Karnataka, to share his profound remarks.
Excellency, Shri B.P.Singh, Governor of Sikkim, Honorable Justice M.N. Venkatacharya, Professor Nadkarni, Professor Ramamurthy, Shri S.V. Ranganath, Chief Secretary, Government of Karnataka, Chief Justice Malimat, other judges, distinguished invitees, and friends. I and Governor B.P.Singh are friends. I read his article in an American magazine, Span, and I tried to discover who is this civil servant. So we met in the Nehru Gardens and we refreshed our memories, and that article was very interesting, and it was published in Span magazine. So I discussed with him. After that, we were in different jobs, we could not meet very much. But after that, he delivered Maulana Azad lecture recently, and I think it's a memorial lecture. And again, it interested me quite a lot. And on one typical word, I put a question to him, which is still in my mind. He used a word, spring, in the Arab. That is a word which does not fit into my mind till today. Spring, the meaning of spring is different than disaster. If you kill people and then you want us to believe that it's spring, the violence, any civilized society, the violence is no place. Whether you go to Lord Buddha, Lord Jain, Guru Nanak Dev Maharaj, or any other reformer, Gandhiji latest, they always adhered to the principle of truth, righteousness, and non-violence. and that is what is accepted. Let me turn to the word Bahudha. Bahudha is used in Vedas, and it is exactly when you see around you so much of diversity. Even within your own home, in your own garden, in your surrounding, you see so many diversities. And even in the atmosphere, you see so much of diversities. So you have to reconcile it. So this is, diversity is by very nature is there in the world. Everywhere you will find different kind of people, different kind of flowers, different kind of vegetable, different kind of animals, and so much. It is endless. But people would like to reconcile it. And that is why Indian sages and seers, rishis, they set to consider it in early part of our civilization, that is the Vedic civilization. And I don't think there is any other better civilization than Vedic civilization. So there, it was explained in many ways, not only in this Ekam Satyam Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. The first Upanishad, Isavasya Upanishad, it is very clearly explained, Isavasyavedam Sarvam Yat Kinchan Jagatyam Jagat Ten Itikyeten Bhunjitam Agrada Kasyasya Vidam. Just one shloka from Isavasya, and you will realize that all that contradiction which we see in the world is reconciled, that all that pervades this world is one God, one Ishwar, one Paramatma that pervades the whole universe. So it is Isavasyam, conveyed in simpler word, is Ekam Satyam Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. And Satyam is related to God. The God is one. The sages and seers, Vipra means scholars, they all see it, name it differently. Straight away, yes, in English we got God, in Islam we say Allah, and Hindu we call it Ishwara, Paramatma, and so on, endless. So the reality is one, that this whole world is a phenomena, accordingly the cosmic phenomena, the natural phenomena, controlled by the power of God, and which is the supreme reality of this world. No scripture can disagree with this proposition. And in Indian scholars, they also say again, Rupam Rupam Pratirupam. Again they say, Ekam Vibham Sarvam. Then again say, Ekam Santam Bahudha Kalpayanti. The God is one, it is in your imagination different kinds. But God reality is one. So it is the unity, essential unity, which brings the world closer. Again I will remind you that India is different from the other world. I have been thinking about it. I read the entire Greek philosophy. You go to Greek, there is a town, Miletus, where all Greek philosophers have been born. And they have not gone beyond that thought of elementary materialistic discussion. But your Vedas were not written by one person. There were sages and sages who contributed in their period of yore their view about God. And they have described it in many ways. So in order to correlate, they say that Ekam Satyam Vipra Bahudha Vadanti, it's a Vedic version. And it is a spiritual version of the unity of Godhead. Same word is given in Islam. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Allah is one. And Prophet is the messenger of that God. Same is said in Bible. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. But God is different. God for the whole universe. Nobody has proclaimed, even Americans, that there are two gods. On their dollar it is written, in God we believe. So the existence of God is one. For whole universe, there is only one sun in the orbit. which gives light to the whole universe. And it is so meticulously fitted in the orbit that it gives light to every part of the universe without discrimination. Even in the field of law, we comply the principles of natural justice. So nature can be seen in diversity, nature can be reconciled to the unity. And this is a human approach, not a military approach. Military approach is might is right. There is no respect for weaker nations. And you can see it since the days of United Nations was existed till today. India has got so much population, no representation in Security Council. So where is equality and justice? Again, we must go into our own version of our culture. You read Allama Iqbal, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी. And if you read the word, the whole poem, Naya Sewale, and Sare Jahan Se Acha, you see all these for yourself. Confidence and as a national pride, we have to remember that going out for interpretations of our own values is not a healthy thing. Why can't we read our Vedas? I don't think any problem. Why can't we read our Upanishads? And our scholars and our saints have been so powerful. Within Karnataka, you can get everything from here. From Adi Shankara to Ramanuja to Madhava, and later on Purandara, Kanakdasa, Haridasa, all this will explain everything. From Vedic period we came to the Puranic version, again explaining the diversity and then unity, essential unity. What is the message of Bhagavad Gita? The biggest Mahapuran is Bhagavad Puran. I am a trustee of that institution. It is in Uttar Pradesh. I have made a lot of discoveries from there. That Puranic literature, the best part of it is the Bhagavad Puran. And in that you get the message of Gita. Lord Krishna says, you can see me in everything and everything in me. So everything is controlled in the unity of Godhead, and that is Bahudha approach. You can't see that he is different from me. He is different from me because the creation is one and we are all children of the God. This is the approach all religions have given to us, and this is the job of the religion, that they will have to reconcile the whole world into a principle of universal harmony. On the first gate of Indian Parliament, our founding father wrote this. You can see when you enter the central hall, there is a shloka. Ayam nijam parovaiti ganana lagu chetasam udar charitranam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakum. It is much broader concept than Bahudha. Udar charitranam. Who will say today udar charitranam? Today they say narrow charitram. No udar charitram. Because we are racist. We are casteist. The communal approach. They are destroying. But Indians, the founding father of Indian Constitution, great people led by Gandhi, they selected the first sloka. When you enter it, is this: we believe in Vasudev Kudamkam, we believe in Udar Charitranam, and for us the whole universe is one family. We welcome every leader in India, give him full respect, use no protocol. Actually, India has never believed in this kind of treatment, His Excellency, this and that. We have treated everybody fairly and equally. And principle of natural justice, even when kings and queens were there, they were heard in the darbar directly. And if we read to the principle of Indian administration of justice, the ruler also, they used to have a dharmadhikari in the court to decide both sides after hearing both. Righteousness, justice. Because again, our principle is Satyameva Jayate. Satyameva Jayate. If truth triumphs, then essentially we will definitely go by righteousness. Astoma, Tamsoma, Jyotirgamaya, all these principles of Vedic principle, they are such time-tested truths that there is no room for dilution. But how many people in the world use it? We have suffered by colonial rule. We have suffered by all kind of oppressions. But see what our leader Gandhi decided. He told Subhash Chandra Bose, there is no place for violence in my movement. Recently, Oxford Press itself has brought the entire correspondence between Gandhi and Nehru. I am reading every letter very minutely, and ultimately both were differing on the approach to religion. Nehru said, I don't believe in religion. I treat everything from a scientific angle, and Gandhi stuck to his guns. He was deeply religious, a Vaishnava. That is why we wanted one song to be sung here in the Vaishnava tradition. So that we revived that tradition. You can belong to any religion. You can belong to any caste. You can practice any philosophy. But you cannot say that I will do injustice to your other fellow citizen. Civic sense, civic sense. It's a basic human civic sense that your neighbor, what Jesus Christ says, love thy neighbor as thyself. We also believe it. All these are in our whole civilization, and this is a part of our culture. But question is, there is an impatient world and exploitation of the weaker by the strong. This military power is horrible. Whatever justification after Second World War, this is not done good to the humanity. You use military power, there will be a reaction to it. You do it. After what happened after September 11? The terrorism has aggravated and unfortunately transported to our country also. I have studied the post-Babri demolition tragedy. I have seriously investigated it as a minister. The entire thing happened by intolerance. This is a vast country, particularly you see Karnataka. Karnataka has absolutely a history where Hindus and Muslims fought the Britishers in Srirangapatnam. Can you destroy this legacy? No. This house where I am living was built by a Britisher. Can I destroy it because a Britisher built it? We have no such culture to destroy the things belonging to others. Evolution of the world, you do not know what could be found underneath. If you go on digging this world, you will find graves, you will find monuments destroyed. Because history, people say sometimes this part is separated from Africa, this. Cannot. This whole phenomena of the world is endless, subject to change and decay and destruction, but new ideas come. I have discussed with Japanese Akira Foundation. They are enunciating new principles of religious harmony. And similarly, Nelson Mandela, a great Gandhian, he is also contributing to this. Then Desmond Tutu, another great man, they are all meeting to find Dalai Lama, a purest soul today in the world. He is in exile, intolerance. I personally feel very sorry for this, that they are not getting even their own foot on their soil. All these problems are intolerance, no respect for the others. So therefore, we must learn as Indians, we must discover ourselves. Rabindranath Tagore, in the famous lecture we made, and I was very impressed when I read it in the Ram Mohan Roy Memorial Lecture in England. You have a unitary church in England, and Ram Mohan Rai built it. That is a unitary church, where all faiths sit together and they perform, and they meet tolerance. So I personally feel Bahudha has strictly narrated one great truth, that God is one. We may call it by different names. We may belong to different religions. And recently I heard a Parsi on KM Munshi Memorial Lecture, Mr. Dastur. You must read what these Parsis contributed. Small community, but excellent man from very beginning and till today in all walks of life. And we must respect their own way of life. And we do it. That is why I personally go to see that minorities are happy, minorities are not disturbed. This Bahudha can be successful only by tolerance. And we have a duty. If Jawaharlal Nehru and Gandhi would not have accepted Bahudha, then we were partitioned only on the basis of religion, two-nation theory. Ultimately, same Allama Iqbal became hostile after saying "Sare jahan se acha Hindustan hamara." He went out and joined Pakistan formation. We have lost quite a lot by intolerance. We cannot do. We must respect, which is the ethos of our constitution and our way of life, and reconcile with our past. You travel to your past, a magnificent past, a magnificent, glorious past, Vedic civilization, Quranic civilization, then epics of our Ramayana and Mahabharata. They are all great works done by religious leaders. And today we have so much of Bahudha in India. You go to Assam, a different kind of society. You go to Bengal, a different kind of society. Everywhere there is Bahudha. Unless we will reconcile it, there will be no India. Because they will say we are all different. The unity is represented by diversity, is a natural phenomenon. And religion is a matter which does not create division, it reconciles. And it reconciles leading to harmony. And we must argue on it. Vivekananda argued in the World Assembly of Religion in Chicago and convinced the whole world. We have argued. Gandhi has now been accepted by the world. So we have this, and we should propagate on this. We cannot really follow what British society, European society, they are all materialistic world. Millions and billions and trillions. You can't talk to, you must have read Oscar Wilde and you must have seen others. They have made a fun of their society. Nothing beyond money. No spirituality of any kind. They rejected Socrates. They don't go beyond the matters of state. Aristotle, all these. We are a country of saints and seers, and our values are represented by our saint judge, Venkatacharya. Nobody can produce a Venkatacharya. We have produced it. He is a saint. We have a chief secretary sitting in front of us, a great saint and a good administrator. We have distinguished people amongst us, Justice Malimat also, all these great people. And we must compete with pies in a matter of building the nations, isn't it? So I am proud that I have the privilege to serve the state, and you come more and more. You will see India is capable of propagating Bahudha, and it's being done by our paramparas and by our culture. Culture is not a matter of possession of everybody. Culture is in your genes. India is inherited from our rishi. We are the generation of rishis. We are the saints. And a collection of all these sayings is Veda. Every rishi has given his viewpoint and they have been codified via Vyas. So I personally feel spirituality and science and technology have to be read together and combined to suit the conditions of time. And this lecture will help quite a lot. It's a very outstanding book and well written in the proper time. And I feel that our friend, the Governor, Excellency B.P.Singh, has absolutely very good health. He will go on contributing. So wish you very, very health and prosperous future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your generous remarks. I now request Dr. Ramdas Pai, Chancellor of Manipal University, for giving the bouquets. To His Excellency, Governor of Karnataka, to His Excellency, Governor of Sikkim, His Lordship Justice Venkatachalaya, Professor M.V. Nadkarni, and Professor V.S. Ramamurthy. Thank you, sir. It is now my pleasant duty to propose the word of thanks for this evening on behalf of Oxford University Press. A hearty thanks to His Excellency, Governor of Karnataka, His Excellency, Governor of Sikkim, His Lordship Justice M.N. Venkatachalaya, Professor M.V. Nadkarni, the Chief Speakers for this evening. I also propose a special thanks to Professor V.S. Ramamurthy, and also I take this opportunity to thank Ms. Priya from Manipal Group, Dr. Ramdas Pai, Chancellor of Manipal University, the ADC to His Excellency, Governor of Karnataka, Mr. Prabhakar, ADC to His Excellency, Governor of Sikkim, Major Satyadev Singh, and Ms. Sangeeta Katil. I also take this opportunity to thank the all guest invitees for coming here and making this program a great grand success. And also I thank the media to making this program a success. I now request all to please join us for the high tea. Thank you.